Leopard geckos are a very common pet within the reptile hobby, and perhaps you're thinking of getting one of your own. Well, today you're in luck because this care guide will help you to properly care for your leopard gecko. Enclosure size. The bare minimum size enclosure for an adult leopard gecko is a 40-gallon enclosure, or an enclosure that's roughly 36 inches by 18 inches by 18 inches. However, a 20-gallon or a 30 by 12 by 12 enclosure will be an acceptable size for a juvenile or a baby leopard gecko. Many people believe that a 10-gallon enclosure is an acceptable size for an adult leopard gecko, but this is not true. A 10-gallon is way too small for an adult leopard gecko. Maybe something like a hatchling or baby, but a juvenile or an adult in a 10-gallon is not good at all. You will want the enclosure to be longer than it is tall because leopard geckos are a terrestrial, ground-dwelling species. They will climb onto rocks and other decor you have in the enclosure from time to time, but they are not too good at it. They lack the toe pads that many other gecko species have, like New Caledonian geckos, like crested geckos, tokay geckos, and gargoyle geckos. Temperature and humidity. Another reason your leopard gecko's enclosure should be at least a 40-gallon long enclosure is that it allows you to create a proper temperature gradient throughout the entire enclosure. One side of the enclosure should be warmer than the other to allow the gecko to thermoregulate. Leopard geckos rely on the external temperatures of their environment to maintain their body temperature. They should also have a basking spot during the day. This basking spot temperature should be around 92 to 94 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 to 34 degrees Celsius. During the day, the warm side of the enclosure should go from around 92 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 to 29 degrees Celsius. And the cool side should range from 75 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 to 21 degrees Celsius. Anything below 65 is a bit too cold. You shouldn't need any heating equipment at night, but if you do, it will probably be best to use a ceramic heat emitter. Ceramic heat emitters produce no visible light. That way, you do not disturb your gecko's day-night cycle. You will want to keep your leopard gecko's enclosure's humidity at around 30 to 40%. However, they can tolerate humidity as low as 20 to 25% and even as high as 50%. However, it should be noted that high humidity can cause health problems like respiratory infections, and too low of humidity can lead to shedding problems as well. You should use at least 2 digital thermometers, one on the warm side and one on the cool side to keep an eye on temperatures, and a digital hydrometer to make sure the humidity is stable. Heating and lighting. Any heating equipment that you use must be hooked up to a thermostat. A thermostat regulates and maintains the temperature of the heating equipment. Not using a thermostat with your reptile's heating equipment can result in burns on your pet. And I have kind of like living proof of this. One of my leopard geckos, Titan, my newest rescue leopard gecko, came to me with burns on his back and leg. So, and I'll throw a picture up right now so you can see that. It's pretty nasty. So again, use a thermostat. Also, not using a thermostat poses a fire hazard to you. So it's not just a risk to your pet, but also use. So please use a thermostat. And for heating equipment itself, it's best to use a deep heat projector or a halogen bulb. However, again, ceramic heat emitters are generally recommended if temperatures get too cold at night because they produce no visible light. They technically produce light, but it's not really visible, or at least to our eyes. I won't really go into that now, but I think you catch my drift. Deep heat projectors and halogen bulbs do produce visible light for daytime heating needs. Another option is a daytime basking bulb and a normal heat lamp. Heat mats are also very commonly used for leopard geckos because they are thought by many not to bask at all. However, this is not really true. Leopard geckos will occasionally bask, like they're cryptic baskers, so they're cathermeral, meaning they are active whenever their food is. Heat mats also don't raise the ambient temperature of the enclosure and only provide surface heat. Heat mats also don't provide any light for your leopard gecko. So heat mats are okay in situations such as when you need something to use temporarily, or maybe something, again, heating at night. But a better option would be, again, a deep heat projector with a halogen bulb or even a basking lamp. And again, remember to use a digital thermometer and hydrometer as well as a thermostat with your heating equipment. And as for lighting, leopard geckos do not require UVB lighting to thrive. However, many people recommend to give them UVB because it is thought to be beneficial to them. There was a study on this done, I think it was earlier this year or the end of 2021, revealing that there's kind of no real evidence of there being any kind of benefit to UVB lighting in leopard geckos, but it is still thought that they benefit from lower amounts of UVB than, say, a bearded dragon would need. If you do use UVB, use a tube UVB bulb, as coil bulbs tend to go out much, much quicker. And 0.5 to 0.7 UVI is the recommended amount for a leopard gecko. Keep in mind that albinos will be much more sensitive to lighting, and if you do give your albino leopard gecko UVB, they should only have about 0.5 UVI. Anything more is probably going to harm them. Supplementation. You will need to dust your leopard gecko's food with pure calcium powder every third feeding as adults. Dust its food with calcium powder that has vitamin D3 every fifth feeding, and a multivitamin powder once a month. You can also just put in calcium powder in a dish instead of manually feeding it to your leopard gecko, as leopard geckos can sense when they need calcium and will lick it straight from the dish. However, if you notice bubbles under your leopard gecko's arm, it may mean that it's taking in too much calcium. If this happens, just reduce the amount of times you give calcium powder and the frequency. Make sure all of these are phosphorus free, as they get all the phosphorus they need from their food. Not properly supplementing them can result in MBD, aka metabolic bone disease. This is where the animal's bones become spongy and deformed, and it is very painful. Many leopard geckos, unfortunately, with MBD end up having to be euthanized. Note, if you are using UVB lighting, you will still need to use calcium powder and a multivitamin, but not calcium powder with vitamin D3. It should also be noted that giving too many supplements can result in a calcium or D3 overdose, which can kill the gecko. Feeding. As for feeding, leopard geckos are insectivores, meaning they only eat insects. Good feeder insects are things such as crickets, dubia roaches, and black soldier fly larvae. Mealworms are also a very common feeder insect, but they lack nutrients and can be a little hard for some geckos to digest. It is recommended that mealworms be more of a treat for your leopard gecko. Another feeder insect is waxworms, but these are extremely fattening, and leopard geckos can seem to become addicted to waxworms, only eating waxworms. And I actually had to deal with this with one of my leopard geckos, Lizzie. She was addicted to waxworms, and it was kind of hard to get her off, but she didn't give me too hard of a time, thankfully, and I got her back onto crickets. So, seeing how unhealthy waxworms are, they should be a very occasional treat. Adult leopard geckos should be fed 2 to 3 times a week. Skip at least 2 days in between feedings for an adult leopard gecko. Juveniles and subadults should be fed every other day, skipping only 1 day in between feedings. And baby leopard geckos should be fed every day. Also note that you must gut load your feeder insects by feeding them certain foods. Good foods to gut load your feeder insects are carrots, cucumbers, squash, apples, and bananas. Gut loading your feeder insects provide more nutrients your leopard gecko needs. You should also give your leopard gecko a water dish with clean water. Use a water dechlorinator to make tap water safe for your leopard gecko's consumption. Dechlorinator will take out any heavy metals and chlorine out of the water, and not using dechlorinator could potentially allow harm to your pet leopard gecko. Decor and hides. Many people believe that leopard geckos feel uncomfortable in larger enclosures, but this is not true. They only feel uncomfortable in large enclosures when there's not enough clutter or decor. Your leopard gecko should have plenty of spaces to hide behind, as well as at least 3 main hides. One on the warm side for a warm hide, one on the cool side for a cool hide, and one in the middle closer to the cool side. The hide in the middle will be the moist hide. This is where the gecko will go to shed its skin. For the moist hide, you can put down paper towel, sphagnum moss, or even cocoa fiber and mist it down from time to time. Next is substrate. The substrate is what you put on the bottom of your gecko's enclosure. There are many different kinds of substrates. The most recommended substrate for a leopard gecko is a 70% topsoil, 30% sand mixture. This will probably be the best substrate choice for them because it will be the most similar to what they live on out in the wild. Be sure that the topsoil does not have any added fertilizers or that the sand does not have any sort of chemicals in it. Another substrate you could use is reptisoil and cocoa fiber. However, in my own experience, I noticed that cocoa fiber by itself can be a bit too dusty, but keep in mind any loose substrate that you use for an arid species will be a little dusty anyway, so just keep that in mind. And I've also noticed that reptisoil by itself can be a bit too moist. So a 50-50 mixture seems to cancel out these two cons. But this route is overly expensive, so I don't recommend doing it anyway. And note that coconut fiber can be a bit too moist when you get it from those expandable blocks that you must place in water. So getting it from a bag would be better. But again, it's way too expensive, so just do the topsoil and sand thing. Non-loose substrates are things like paper towel and tile. Paper towel is needed for when you first get the gecko and it's in quarantine. Quarantining your leopard gecko is very important so you can monitor its stool and see if any health problems arise. And also, if you have any other pets or reptiles, to keep those other pets safe in case your new addition to your family is sick. Non-loose substrates are things like paper towel and tile. Paper towel is needed for when you first get the gecko and it's in quarantine. Quarantining your gecko is very important for when you first get it, so that way you can monitor its stool and monitor its overall health to make sure it's healthy and not sick. And also, it helps to keep your other pets safe just in case the gecko is sick. Paper towel also creates a very sterile environment for when you first get the gecko. Or maybe it's a hatchling or a newborn or a younger gecko that can't really go onto loose substrate just yet. So you might have to keep it on paper towel for those reasons as well. However, it is also advised not to use paper towel long term because it is a very thin layer between the gecko and the bottom of the enclosure. This can be very hard on their joints, just like if you're walking around barefoot on concrete every day 24/7. Tile has the same issue. However, tile retains heat very well, so you can use tile just for the basking spot. And a very dangerous substrate is sand. Many people believe that because leopard geckos are desert animals, they live on sand. But not all deserts have sand. A desert is a place with little to no water. Leopard geckos come from a more rocky type deserts, not sandy ones. Sand can also cause impaction. Impaction is when the animal gets a blockage in its stomach or intestines and it cannot pass stool. This can ultimately end up killing your leopard gecko. And many people think that if your leopard gecko has access to proper heating, impaction will no longer be a risk. This calci sand also poses this threat and is possibly even more unsafe because it has calcium in it, which makes your leopard gecko more inclined to want to eat it. Sand is also just a very unnatural substrate for leopard geckos to be on. So just avoid sand, pure sand at all costs. Go with a topsoil sand mixture instead. Another bad substrate for leopard geckos is reptile carpet. Reptile carpet harbors a lot of bad bacteria and it's just overall disgusting, and you have to have at least 2 or 3 of them. One that has been washed, maybe one that's drying, and one that you're using. And also leopard geckos can get their claws and teeth stuck in the little fibers of the reptile carpet, and they can even rip their claws out, which is not good at all. So please don't use reptile carpet, don't use sand or calcium sand. Next up, we have cohabitation. Some people say leopard geckos are a quote-unquote communal species, but this couldn't be farther from the truth. Leopard geckos are a solitary species and do not want to have friends, nor do they need friends, as some people will say. Cohabiting leopard geckos can result in the harm or even death of one or both of them. Two males will fight to the death, as there will be no escape for them, either of them, because they are confined to an enclosure. A male and female will breed, and that's something I don't recommend if you're just getting into leopard geckos or you don't know the genetic history of your leopard geckos. You wouldn't even keep your male and female leopard gecko in permanently together even if you did breed them. But again, I don't recommend you breeding leopard geckos if you're just not getting into them. Some people say two females might possibly get along for a little while, but it's not worth risking it. I believe JTB Reptiles used to have a few leopard geckos cohabitated together, and I heard from one of my friends that he had to separate them all because they started getting aggressive towards each other. So again, please don't cohabitate any leopard geckos, and please do not ever let an adult leopard gecko around a baby leopard gecko. Leopard geckos have been known to cannibalize younger members of their species. So please don't cohabitate any leopard geckos together, please. Next up, we have shedding. Leopard geckos, like all reptiles, shed their skin. However, unlike most lizards, leopard geckos shed it all in one piece, kind of like a snake. Sometimes there isn't enough humidity in the enclosure or the gecko's moist hide, and there will be some stuck shed on the leopard gecko. The most common area for leopard geckos to experience stuck shed is on their toes. This is more common with younger individuals. To remove stuck shed off of your leopard gecko's toes, you can give it a quote-unquote bath. Get a container and fill it with lukewarm water, only to where the gecko's feet are submerged in it. Make sure your leopard gecko can breathe at all times and stand up at all times while doing this. Let your leopard gecko's toes soak for around 5 to 10 minutes. After this, you can take a Q-tip and gently roll the stuck shed off of its toes. You could even try with tweezers, however you must be very careful when using tweezers as you could pinch your leopard gecko. If the shed is stuck on the head of the gecko, use a Q-tip to roll the stuck shed off of its head. However, if you do not feel comfortable trying to get stuck shed off by yourself, you can have a vet do it instead. Also, please note that if your leopard gecko is in the process of shedding, do not try to pull the skin off of it. Wait until it finishes, and if you still see stuck shed on it, then you can try to remove it. Leaving stuck shed on your gecko's feet and toes could result in the animal losing some of its toes or limbs, if you allow multiple layers to become stuck, that is. However, as long as you have proper humidity and a moist hide, your leopard gecko should be able to shed perfectly fine on its own. Taming and handling. When you first get your leopard gecko, it may not be tamed down. Taming a leopard gecko is relatively easy. Lay your hand flat on the bottom of the enclosure, perhaps after feeding, and let the gecko come to your hand. Over time, it will be more used to your presence, and over time, you can start to pick the gecko up. Do not try to restrain the gecko, just let it walk from hand to hand. Over time, it will get more used to this and be tamed down. Handling your gecko is completely optional. Leopard geckos don't need to be handled, but if you want to, you can. Be sure to do it in moderation and keep handling sessions short and sweet. You don't want to stress your gecko out by handling them too much. Around 5 to 7 minutes is a good time limit to have for handling your leopard gecko. Never, and I repeat never, pick up your leopard gecko by its tail. Leopard geckos can break off chunks of their tail, or a portion of their tail, if they feel threatened. Some leopard geckos will regrow their tail back, but it never looks the same. It also is probably very painful for them as well. Some leopard geckos won't even grow their tail back at all, so please do not pick your leopard gecko up by its tail. Weight and size. Leopard geckos generally grow to about 7 to 8 inches long on average. However, some individuals might be larger or smaller. A leopard gecko smaller than 6 inches, however, is most likely stunted in growth if it is a year or older. Leopard geckos are very good at retaining weight. It makes sense because these animals are desert animals and sometimes don't encounter water for long periods of time. They store fat in their tails, which is why many leopard geckos have such massive tails. However, many people have obese leopard geckos and don't even know it, because a lot of the time, big tails are looked at as healthy, but you shouldn't just go by the tail of your leopard gecko. Some leopard geckos with massive tails are obese, while some are not. The best way to tell if a leopard gecko is overweight is if the gecko has a wide belly from the top view, or if its arms have armpit bubbles. Armpit bubbles resemble blisters under your gecko's arms. This can also be a sign your gecko is taking in too much calcium. On the opposite end, a good way to tell if your leopard gecko is underweight is if the base of the tail is wider than the middle of the tail, or if the head and belly are both wider than the entire tail. If the head and belly and tail are the same width, the leopard gecko is most likely a healthy weight. However, just because the tail is larger than both the head and belly doesn't automatically mean it's overweight. This all differs from gecko to gecko. Like, take Diego. He is around 46 grams at 7 inches, and my other gecko, Blizzard, is around 44, maybe 43 grams at 7 inches. So weight and size differs from gecko to gecko. Males on average are larger than females, on average. I'll throw up a picture of the leopard gecko weight chart that I made. First you have emaciated. Its head is a lot bigger than the rest of its body. Its tail is super thin. Its legs are super thin. It just has no meat on it whatsoever. It's completely emaciated. If your leopard gecko looks like this, it needs urgent veterinary care. And next is underweight. Its head is kind of bigger than its midsection, and its tail is kind of thin. The base of its tail is kind of thinner than the rest. It's kind of thicker than the rest of its tail. And then you have the correct weight. Its head, the rest of its body, and its tail all aligns. Then you have overweight, and then you have obese. And Titan was actually on the obese side of things. Well, probably more of overweight. Actually, now that I've been feeding him, he's kind of gotten a little obese, so I gotta cut back on his food. I've been feeding him dubias, which is another thing. He's kind of stored up the fat through the dubias. But anyway, that's the weight chart. Compare your leopard gecko to that if need be. And moving on from that, we have behavior. Leopard geckos display many different kinds of behaviors. Some, like tongue flicking, means the gecko is curious or exploring something, investigating. Others, such as tail buzzing, can mean the gecko is excited. However, a slightly arched back and a slow, waving tail in the air can be a sign that the gecko is stressed out or frightened. Leopard geckos can also vocalize. A baby might scream when it's frightened, while an adult might, quote unquote, kind of like bark, make a barking noise if it is startled. Problematic morphs. Ooh boy, here we go. There are tons of leopard gecko morphs, and I definitely know this. I have a wide variety of morphs in my collection. Out of the 10 leopard geckos I have, Diego, I thought he was a lavender tangerine. I don't know what he is. Some people are like he's a wild type, but his spots are too blotchy to be a wild type. And the way he looked when he was younger, he's obviously some type of tangerine. I don't know what he is. Lizzie is a high yellow. Blizzard is a blizzard. Gabriella, she's a max super snow. Ginger is a banana blizzard. Buddy is like a wild type ghost thing. I don't even know what he is. Titan is like a hypo tangerine. And Phoenix is a Tremper albino. And then you have Ziggy. She is a Tangerine, and the unnamed little one. I still don't have a name for him. Any name suggestions, please let me know down in the comments. He is a bold, or she. I don't know what it is yet. It's still kind of young to tell. But with there being so many morphs, some of them have problems. Enigma leopard geckos, probably the most famous problematic leopard gecko morph that there is. They have something called Enigma syndrome. Enigma syndrome is a neurological disorder directly associated with the Enigma gene in the leopard geckos. Symptoms of Enigma syndrome are things such as death rolling, stargazing, spinning in circles, head tilting, and seizures. Enigma syndrome is incurable. In some cases, it can be so serious that the leopard gecko has to be put down. Another problematic morph is the lemon frost. The lemon frost gene causes cancer and tumors in the leopard gecko. Lemon frost leopard geckos can also be hatched very deformed. This problem is also not curable. However, in recent years, there's a specific breeder, I believe Geeky Gecko Creations, has been crossbreeding the Eublepharis macularis species, the common leopard geckos we keep, the one that has the lemon frost morph. He's been crossbreeding that one with another subspecies or another species, Eublepharis turkmenicus, in an attempt to make a non-cancerous leopard gecko. More data is still needed on this project. I'm very interested in it, so yeah. But anyway, the last problematic morph is the white and yellow leopard gecko. This color morph, like most morphs, is problematic when bred poorly. Geckos who have white and yellow syndrome have very similar symptoms as those who have Enigma syndrome. White and yellow leopard geckos only get the condition, however, when they are the result of inbreeding. Another morph that is often massively inbred is the black night leopard geckos, but these two can be corrected within a few generations. In all, leopard geckos make fantastic pets, but please, before getting any animal, remember to research the animal first. Not just a quick search on Google or just taking one person or source's advice for it. Also remember to purchase everything you need before getting the animal. I hope this care guide has helped you to learn about these animals and wasn't too difficult to understand. I thank you for taking the time and watching this video, and may you have a wonderful time with your pet leopard gecko, if you have one or if you're planning on. I know this this video was kind of wonky. My first time using a script, so it's not perfect or anything, but I hope you enjoyed the video. I will link sources down to other care guides on YouTube in the description. I will also link my printable leopard gecko care guide down in the description. And as for that, please like, subscribe, share with anyone you know is planning on getting a leopard gecko. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye, peeps.